Friday evening, a luxury restaurant in London. Golden lights over crystal glasses and polished tables. A young woman in a simple dress trembles by the entrance, eyes searching desperately around the room. Her ex-boyfriend sits at a nearby table, hand in hand with his new fiancée, both smiling. She approaches a man sitting alone at the corner. "Sir, please, will you pretend to be my date tonight?" The man looks up slowly, deep eyes, calm voice. "I don't know who you are, but yes, we have a date." No one knows this stranger is Nathan Hale, CEO of Europe's largest hotel chain. Everything changes tonight. Ella Carter is 26 years old. She works as a receptionist at one of London's most prestigious hotels. Her life was simple until 4 years ago when she met James, a man who promised her forever. James proposed to her best friend last month. Ella discovered it through Instagram, the way most heartbreaks happen in the modern world. A photo of an engagement ring, a caption. She said yes. Comments flooded in. "Congratulations. So happy for you. You deserve this." She sat alone in her apartment for 3 hours, not crying, not angry, just numb. Her friends called constantly, each conversation starting the same way. "You need to get out. You need to prove you're fine. You need to show him you don't care." So she went to the glass room, the same restaurant where James had proposed to her friend. It was a masochistic choice, she knew, but she needed to see it, needed to confirm that everything she believed in was false. When she walked in, she saw them immediately. James and Sophie, Ella's best friends since childhood. They were laughing, toasting with champagne, completely oblivious to the woman standing frozen by the entrance. Ella wanted to leave. She turned toward the door. That's when she saw him, a man sitting alone at a corner table reading a book. He wasn't handsome in the obvious way. He wasn't tall enough to turn heads or dressed in a way that screamed wealth. He was simply present, comfortable with his own company, undisturbed by the noise around him. Something about his calm made her desperate. She walked straight to his table. Her hands shook. Her voice wavered. But she asked anyway, "Sir, please, will you pretend to be my date tonight?" The man looked up from his book. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and without judgment. He studied her face for a long moment, seeing everything she was trying to hide. Then he closed his book and gestured to the chair across from him. "I don't know who you are, but yes, we have a date. We have a..." It was so simple, so gracious, so exactly what she needed. He stood and pulled out her chair. He ordered wine without asking her preference, choosing something complex and good. He asked her questions but didn't demand answers. He made space for her silence and filled it with easy conversation. For 3 hours, Ella stopped being the woman who had been betrayed. She became someone else, someone interesting, someone worth talking to. She watched James and Sophie laugh across the restaurant, and for the first time all evening, she didn't feel invisible. When the night ended, she thanked the stranger profusely. He smiled and said, "You came here to prove something. You don't need to prove anything to anyone but yourself." She walked out into the London night, and for the first time since discovering James's engagement, she felt like she could breathe. She didn't ask for his name. She didn't exchange phone numbers. She assumed she would never see him again, but she was wrong. 2 weeks later, Ella arrived at work to find the hotel buzzing with news. A new investment group had purchased the property. New management was arriving. There would be changes. The new owner walked into the lobby surrounded by executives, all moving with the efficiency of people used to power. It was him. Nathan Hale, the man from the restaurant, was now her boss. He was CEO of Hale Resorts, one of Europe's largest hotel chains. He was exactly the kind of man who shouldn't have spent his evening helping a stranger recover from heartbreak. When he saw her at the reception desk, he paused. Recognition flashed across his face. Then he smiled slightly and continued walking. Later that day, he appeared at her desk with a coffee. "I'm guessing you didn't know who I was," he said quietly. "Which is exactly why I enjoyed that evening so much." Ella's face flushed. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have..." "You should have," he interrupted. "You needed help. I had the ability to provide it. That's all that matters." He placed the coffee on her desk and walked away, leaving her confused and curious about who this man really was beneath his suit and authority. She had no idea her life was about to change completely. Over the next month, Nathan finds reasons to visit the reception desk. He asks about her day. He brings her coffee from a cafe he discovered. He leaves her small notes about books she should read, movies she should watch, places in London she should visit alone. Ella is confused by his attention. He's her boss. He's a billionaire. She's a receptionist recovering from heartbreak. Nothing about this makes sense, but she enjoys it anyway. One evening after her shift, Nathan asks if she wants to walk. They end up on the Thames path, watching the water reflect the lights of the city. "Why did you help me that night?" Ella asks. "In the restaurant, I mean. You didn't know me." Nathan considers the question carefully. "Because I recognize something in your eyes. I've been there. Someone left me because I wasn't ambitious enough, wealthy enough, impressive enough. I spent years trying to prove I was all those things, but it never made the pain go away." Ella looks at him. "So you became a billionaire CEO?" "I did. And it turns out ambition doesn't cure heartbreak. It just gives you less time to think about it." They walk in silence for a while. The city noise fades. It's just two people, two stories of abandonment, two attempts at understanding what it means to survive rejection. "Do you ever regret it?" Ella asks. "Becoming all of this?" "Not anymore. Because I realized that all of this," he gestures at the city, "it's just noise. What matters is being seen by someone. Really seen. The way you saw me that night when I was just a stranger at a table." Ella feels something shift inside her chest. She realizes she's been looking at Nathan wrong. She's seen him as the boss, the billionaire, the powerful man. But he's been seeing her as a person, as someone worth knowing. When they reach her apartment building, Nathan walks her to the door. He doesn't try to kiss her. He simply says, "Thank you for letting me walk with you." "Thank you for being someone I can walk with," she replies. That night, Ella realizes she stopped thinking about James. She stopped checking Sophie's Instagram. She stopped measuring her worth against their happiness. Instead, she finds herself thinking about Nathan's quiet presence, his unexpected kindness, his ability to make her feel like her life matters. But then, the next morning, everything changes. Gossip spreads through the hotel like wildfire. The new receptionist is dating the CEO. Whispers follow her everywhere. Co-workers who were friendly become cold. She hears comments, "She must be sleeping with him. That's the only way someone like her would get his attention. Gold digger." Ella tries to ignore it, but it wears her down. She's fighting the same narrative she thought she'd escaped. She's invisible again, or worse, she's visible only as someone suspicious, someone undeserving of kindness. At the end of a shift, a coworker named Maria corners her. "Everyone knows you don't actually like him. You're just using him because he's rich." Ella's voice is quiet but steady. "You don't know me. I know enough. People like you don't end up with people like him." That phrase, "people like you," follows Ella home. It echoes in her apartment. It convinces her that this thing with Nathan, whatever it is, can only end badly. She decides to quit. She types her resignation email that night. She doesn't explain. She just says, "Thank you for the opportunity. I'm moving on to pursue other interests." She sends it at midnight and turns off her phone. Nathan finds her apartment the next morning. He knocks on her door with coffee and questions. "Why did you quit?" "Because people are saying things. Because I can't handle being invisible. And I can't handle being visible as something I'm not. Because I think I've gotten too comfortable letting someone else define who I am." Nathan sets down the coffee. "Ella, I don't care what people say. I care. Because it matters if people think I'm only with you for your money. It matters if they think I'm not good enough. It matters because I need to believe I'm good enough. And I can't do that when everyone's questioning it. So what do you want to do?" "I want to prove to myself that I can stand on my own, that I don't need anyone, not James, not you, not anyone, to validate me." Nathan is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "Then go, prove it. But know that I'll be here when you're ready to stop proving things and start just living." Ella takes a job at a small design firm. It pays less money. It offers no prestige, but it's hers. She builds a portfolio. She takes on clients. She works 60-hour weeks and barely sleeps. But she's building something that exists independent of anyone else's validation. 6 months pass with no contact. Then on a Tuesday morning, Ella sees Nathan on the news. His company is facing a crisis. A competitor has leaked false allegations. The board is calling for his resignation. Everything he built is being questioned. She watches him on the screen, calm and dignified, refusing to defend himself. He simply says, "I know who I am. I know my values. If that's not enough for people, then I've already lost what matters." Ella realizes what she's done. She's been so focused on proving her independence that she's abandoned someone who loved her without conditions. She's replicated the same rejection that James and Sophie inflicted on her. She shows up at his office that afternoon. Nathan is sitting in the dark, staring out the window. He doesn't seem surprised to see her. "I watched you," Ella says, "on the news. I watched you stand there and refuse to fight for yourself." "I learned from the best," Nathan replies. "You taught me that sometimes the bravest thing is to let go of fighting and just be yourself. I'm sorry I was afraid. I know. I was too." "Can I start over?" Ella asks. "Not pretending, not proving, just being with you?" Nathan stands and takes her hand. "You never stopped being with me. I was just waiting for you to realize it." They don't kiss, not yet, but something settles between them, a quiet understanding that they both survived their own abandonment and found each other on the other side. When love becomes real, sometimes everything else must change. After Ella returns, Nathan knows he needs to make a decision. The board wants him to step down from the CEO position. A scandal involving his predecessor's unethical practices threatens to destroy the company's reputation. The shareholders are demanding blood. But Nathan has learned something from Ella. He's learned that running from problems never solves them. It only delays the inevitable. He calls an emergency board meeting. "I'm not resigning," he announces. "Instead, I'm launching a full investigation into the company's practices under previous leadership. Everything will be made public. Every transaction, every decision, every ethical violation." The board members are silent. The CFO stands. "This will destroy the company." "The company will survive if we're honest," Nathan replies. "But it will definitely die if we keep hiding." Over the next weeks, Nathan works with auditors and investigators to uncover decades of corruption. Millions of dollars have been misappropriated. Contracts have been falsified. Workers have been exploited and underpaid. The investigation reveals that Nathan's predecessor built his wealth by systematically defrauding the company's employees. Pensions were stolen. Benefits were cut. People lost their retirements to line executive pockets. Ella watches Nathan go through this process. She sees him sacrifice his reputation to tell the truth. She sees him absorb the anger and blame even though he inherited the mess. One evening, she finds him in his office, surrounded by documents, looking exhausted. "Why are you doing this?" she asks. "You could have just let it go. You could have moved forward." "Because you taught me something," Nathan says. "You taught me that integrity isn't something you perform for an audience. It's something you live with when no one's watching." Ella sits beside him and takes his hand. "I was wrong. I was so focused on proving I didn't need you that I didn't see how much I wanted you." "You needed to prove it to yourself," Nathan says gently. "That wasn't wrong. That was necessary." When the investigation concludes, the news breaks. CEO exposes company corruption, sacrifices billions in market value. But something unexpected happens. Instead of the company collapsing, a different kind of transformation occurs. Employees who had been demoralized suddenly believe in the company again. Investors who valued ethics support the company's new direction. The media celebrates Nathan as a leader willing to do the right thing, even when it costs him everything. However, the board attempts to remove him anyway. They're furious that he exposed corruption involving several board members themselves. They call a shareholder vote, planning to replace him with someone more willing to sweep problems under the rug. Nathan knows what's coming. He's known for weeks, but instead of fighting in silence, he chooses to fight in public, with transparency as his weapon. He prepares a comprehensive presentation. He shows the evidence of corruption. He explains the company's new ethical framework. He discusses the financial impact of transparency. He shares the stories of employees whose retirements were stolen, whose families suffered because executives prioritized profit over people. He details how the previous leadership systematically intimidated anyone who questioned their practices. He shows internal emails where corruption was openly discussed. He presents receipts for bribes, kickbacks, and fraudulent contracts. The presentation is devastating. It's also the truth. Then something unexpected happens. Ella attends the shareholder meeting, though Nathan didn't ask her to. She sits in the back, watching her partner stand before hundreds of powerful people and refuse to compromise. When Nathan finishes his presentation, there's silence. The opposing board members try to spin the narrative, claiming Nathan is exaggerating, that this is all internal politics, that exposing corruption damages the company's image. Then Ella does something unexpected. She stands up and asks to speak. The board members try to stop her. She's not a shareholder. She has no official role, but some shareholders voice their support for hearing from her. Against protocol, she's given the microphone. "I'm Ella Carter," she says, her voice steady and clear to the room of executives and investors. "I'm not a shareholder. I have no financial interest in this company. I'm just a woman who once worked as a receptionist at one of Hale Resort's hotels." She pauses, making eye contact with the board members who tried to silence her. "6 months ago, I watched CEO Nathan Hale spend his time talking to me, a woman who had nothing to offer him professionally, nothing that could advance his career or increase his profit. He treated me with dignity, not because it benefited him, but because it was the right thing to do." She points to Nathan. "That man stood up here and told you the truth about corruption that costs real people real money, real families, real retirements, and some of you would rather shoot the messenger than face what you've done." Her voice grows stronger. "Tonight, you're being asked to vote on whether this man should lead your company. I'm here to tell you that character isn't measured by profit margins. It's measured by how someone treats the people who can't do anything for them. And this man has always chosen kindness. He's chosen truth. He's chosen what's right even when it would have been easier to choose what's profitable." She looks directly at the board. "If you vote him out, you're voting for a company that profits from corruption. If you vote him in, you're voting for a company that values integrity over expediency. The choice is yours. But I know which choice Ella Carter would make. I know which choice anyone with a conscience should make." The room erupts. Some shareholders applaud. Some board members rage. Security tries to escort Ella out, but shareholders block them. When the vote happens, 83% of shareholders vote to keep Nathan as CEO. 5 board members resign in disgrace. 3 face criminal charges for their involvement in the corruption. That evening, Nathan finds Ella on the roof of the office building, looking out over London's glittering skyline. "What you did today," he says, coming to stand beside her. "You didn't have to do that." "I did," Ella replies, "because someone once chose to help me when he didn't have to. Now I get to choose to help him." Nathan pulls her close. "I love you. Not as someone who rescued me or someone I rescued, just as someone I choose every single day to be with." "I love you too," Ella says, "and I'm ready to stop choosing alone. I'm ready to choose us." He kisses her then, finally, after months of uncertainty and fear. It tastes like redemption and acceptance and the simple truth that 2 broken people can choose to build something whole together. A journalist who witnessed the shareholder vote later writes, "CEO Nathan Hale has transformed Hale Resorts from a company built on corruption into a beacon of ethical business practice. But the real transformation happened earlier. It happened when he understood that love means sometimes choosing someone else's integrity over your own profit. And it continued when a receptionist stood up and reminded a room of powerful people that character is what matters most." 1 year later, Ella and Nathan announced the launch of Pretend No More, a foundation dedicated to helping people recover from relationship trauma and rebuild their self-worth. The Foundation's first initiative is a retreat program where people who have experienced betrayal or abandonment can heal in community with others who understand. Ella runs the program personally. She tells her story. She listens to the stories of others. She helps them understand that being left doesn't make you unlovable. It just means you chose someone who couldn't see your worth. Nathan provides the funding, but he does something else too. He sits in the retreat circles as a participant, not a leader. He talks about his own insecurities, his own fear of abandonment, his own journey toward believing in his own value, independent of success. The program becomes wildly successful. Hundreds of people attend. The waiting list grows to over 1,000. At the Foundation's first anniversary gala, Ella and Nathan stand together on stage, not as CEO and receptionist, but as partners. Ella speaks first. When I asked a stranger to pretend to be my date, I thought I was asking for help, but I was actually asking for rescue. And while he did rescue me, what he really taught me was that I could rescue myself. Nathan continues. And when a broken woman walked into my life, I thought I was the one helping, but she was actually healing me. She taught me that power without purpose is empty, that success without someone to share it with is just achievement. They hold hands as they speak, and the room sees something that goes beyond romance. They see two people who have learned to see each other clearly, to love each other honestly, to choose each other actively rather than passively. After the gala, they walk through the London streets late into the night. They pass the restaurant where they met. They walk across Westminster Bridge where they first talked honestly. They end up back at the Thames Path, where everything began to shift. Do you ever regret that night? Ella asks. The night I asked you to pretend? Never, Nathan says. Because sometimes the most real things in our lives begin with something that feels like pretending. We pretend until we realize we're not pretending anymore. I love you, Ella says simply. I love you too, and I choose you every day. Not because you rescue me or because I rescue you, but because choosing you makes me better. They kiss under the London lights, and for a moment, the busy city disappears. There's just two people who have learned that love isn't about completing each other. It's about witnessing each other. It's about choosing to stay even when leaving would be easier. A street musician nearby plays a gentle melody on his violin, and a passerby captures the moment on their phone. By morning, it will be shared thousands of times online. A video of a couple kissing on a bridge. A simple moment that resonates because it shows something people desperately want to believe. That love can heal. That broken people can find each other. That sometimes the person you need is the stranger who says yes when you ask them to pretend. 2 years after launching Pretend No More, Ella and Nathan decide to get married. It's not a grand affair, no expensive venue, no elaborate guest list. Instead, they marry at the very restaurant where they met, the Glass Room, with close family and friends. Ella walks down the aisle wearing a simple white dress she designed herself. Nathan waits at the altar, tears in his eyes, not trying to hide his emotion. When they exchange vows, Ella speaks first. When I asked you to pretend, I had no idea I was asking for forever. I had no idea that a stranger's kindness would teach me how to love myself. You didn't rescue me. You reflected back to me my own strength until I could see it. And that's what I promise you. I promise to see you, really see you, every day for the rest of our lives. Nathan's voice is steady. I came to that restaurant thinking I was lonely. I left knowing I was incomplete, but not in the way I thought. I wasn't incomplete because I was missing you. I was incomplete because I was afraid to be known by anyone. You changed that. You showed me that being seen, truly seen, is the greatest gift we can give each other. After they marry, they establish the Pretend No More Scholarship, providing funding for people from disadvantaged backgrounds who want to pursue careers in psychology, therapy, and trauma counseling. The Foundation's annual report includes stories from people who have been helped. A woman who learned to trust again after her husband's infidelity. A man who overcame his shame after being publicly humiliated by his employer. a teenager who discovered her worth after her best friend betrayed her. Each story echoes the same truth. Healing is possible. Recovery is possible. Love is possible, not despite our brokenness, but because of our willingness to be honest about it. 3 years into their marriage, Ella and Nathan publish a book titled Pretend No More, Finding Love in Honesty. It becomes an unexpected bestseller, read by people across the world who see their own stories in Ella and Nathan's journey. One evening, they sit in their apartment overlooking the Thames, the same view that once felt lonely, now filled with light and warmth and the simple comfort of being home with someone who truly knows you. "Do you ever miss the uncertainty?" Ella asks playfully. "When we were just pretending?" "Never," Nathan replies, "because what we have now is so much better than pretending. This is real. This is choosing each other not because we have to, but because we get to." They watch the city lights reflect on the water, the same view they've watched together so many times before. But each time feels new because they're watching it as people who have learned to see each other clearly. Ella thinks back to the night she asked a stranger to pretend. She thinks about how that moment, born from desperation and pain, became the beginning of healing. She thinks about how sometimes the most important moments in our lives arrive unplanned, unexpected, when we're brave enough to ask for help. Nathan squeezes her hand and Ella squeezes back. No words are needed. This is what they've learned, that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about choosing each other in the quiet moments. It's about showing up. It's about saying yes when someone asks you to pretend, knowing that sometimes the pretending becomes the most real thing that ever happens to you. If you believe that healing is possible, that love can grow from the most unexpected moments, and that sometimes asking for help is the bravest thing we can do, subscribe to HA Stories and share this message. Because sometimes the most powerful love stories begin with a simple request from a stranger,